Hello world! Rockstar Games, Nvidia, Uber, Samsung, and a hell of a lot more were all hacked by a group of teenagers in a string of breaches which made even the most experienced of cybercriminals jealous. Whilst their hacker group, LAPSUS, has for now gone dark, now comes the questions. How did a bunch of kids with no experience, no secretive zero-day vulnerabilities, pull off such an impressive series of hacks? US intelligence agencies think this is such an important question that America's Cyber Safety Review Board, which up until now has only ever published one report, has just dedicated its second ever report to dissecting and trying to understand the techniques of LAPSUS. LAPSUS spawned in December of 2021, spending their first few months attacking targets in South America. Brazil's Ministry of Health was first, with LAPSUS claiming via Telegram they'd nabbed 50 terabytes of data. Next came the Brazilian telecoms company Embratel, followed by an Argentinian payment processor. It was kinda just assumed that LAPSUS was just another cybercriminal extortion gang. They'd hack a company, steal some files, and then demand some Bitcoin in exchange for deletion of the data. These kinds of criminal gangs are unlike businesses. They're interested in money and nothing but money. But that theory didn't hold out for long, because LAPSUS quickly went off the rails. After they hacked a Brazilian car rental company, they didn't bother extorting them at all, but rather just redirected their website to a certain adult entertainment site. On top of that, the group started running polls on their Telegram channel, letting their legion of followers decide which of their victims' data they should leak next. It quickly became clear that LAPSUS wasn't your typical financially motivated cybercrime gang when they landed their first big target in February 2022, Nvidia. The group announced on their Telegram channel that they'd nabbed 1 terabyte of data, including schematics, drivers, and firmware. But instead of trying to privately negotiate a ransom payment with Nvidia, they instead made some very bizarre public demands that Nvidia should remove light hash rate limitations from their GPUs, something Nvidia was implementing at the time to bottleneck their GPU's crypto mining abilities, in a bid to make it easier for gamers to get their hands on graphics cards. LAPSUS also demanded they should commit to open sourcing their drivers, something Nvidia was never going to agree to. In another of LAPSUS's high-profile hacks that you'll no doubt be familiar with, one of their members breached Rockstar Games, stealing and then leaking top-secret gameplay of GTA 6. And in another of their hacks, they breached Uber's Slack server, again stealing and leaking confidential data. In total, LAPSUS was responsible for well over a dozen hacks, some of them incredibly high profile, and they all took place within the span of only a single year, with such speed that the Cyber Safety Review Board said in their report that in some instances the operations almost appeared automated. Given the high caliber of victims, you'd think LAPSUS would employ highly technical attack methods, but not really. One of the main techniques used by LAPSUS was SIM swapping, but with a twist. In order for an attacker to conduct a successful SIM swap, they first need to obtain a bunch of information on the victim, like name, address, phone number, and so on. Typically this information might be obtained by phishing, but LAPSUS abused something called EDRs, Emergency Disclosure Requests. These EDRs allow law enforcement agencies to obtain your personal data from tech companies without a warrant, if, and only if, there's some kind of time-sensitive situation that could result in danger of death or serious physical injury, like if there's a kidnapping or a suspected terrorist incident. However, if a cyber bad guy was to somehow gain access to a law enforcement email account and submit an EDR form from it filled out with fake data, then you can bet the tech company is just going to assume it's legit and comply, sending the cybercriminal whatever personal data it is they're after. Once LAPSUS had what they needed to conduct a SIM swap, they typically didn't call carriers themselves, hoping to convince them to do the swap. That would have taken way too long, and LAPSUS was all about speed. Instead, they opted to hire people working at cellular carriers who could do the dirty work for them. This is a post one of their members made on the Verizon subreddit, offering upwards of $20,000 per week to do some inside jobs. Another of LAPSUS's techniques discussed in the report was their use of multi-factor authentication fatigue attacks, as in just spamming a victim with login request notifications until they became annoyed enough just to hit accept. It's incredibly low tech, but LAPSUS famously employed this technique to successfully hack Uber. You could argue in that case LAPSUS just got kinda lucky, but you can't get lucky every time. Whilst the details of how they carried out each breach just isn't public, from what we do know, LAPSUS wasn't very technically sophisticated, but rather they employed creativity, mixing well-known techniques to achieve a string of breaches that experienced cybercriminals could only dream of. As for the question of why, at this point I think it's clear that the LULZ was probably their main priority. Whilst at points it did seem like they were purely in it for the money, LAPSUS often wasn't very good at extorting their victims. For example, after they hacked EA Games, LAPSUS couldn't figure out where to send the extortion request, so they tried to recruit a journalist at Vice who was interviewing them to be their messenger and put them in touch with someone at EA Games. Obviously, the journalist refused. LAPSUS also wasn't very good at OPSEC, because regardless of the fact that the FBI was hot on their trail for months, LAPSUS unravelled all by themselves. After the alleged leader of LAPSUS, who goes by White, fell out with a business partner, White was doxxed, in what was probably the most in-depth dox I think I've ever seen. This was brutal. Following the dox, 7 apparent members of LAPSUS, including White, were arrested in the UK. And thanks to just how young some of them were, I mean the youngest here was just 16, the police aren't revealing much. However, just as I was wrapping up this video, the trial of White, whose real name is Aryan Kotaj, concluded, with him being found 12 charges. However, the guy was previously deemed unfit to stand trial, apparently because of his autism, so there's a good chance he actually won't spend a day in prison. This is the only LAPSUS member we know the identity of, the rest currently are a mystery. What isn't a mystery though is our sponsor, Akamai. Akamai Connected Cloud is your Swiss Army knife for cloud computing. These guys can handle everything cloud, and they're giving you a $100 60-day credit just to get started. One of their features that I love is their app marketplace, which makes it super easy to spin up servers with pre-configured software. Need an instance of Kali? Just configure the basics with their installer and you're done. So click the link in the description now to claim your free $100 credit. As always, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video. Have a good one.